everyone, and welcome to the Amber Data Derivatives podcast. I'm here with Will Corkin. He is the co-founder of SOMA.Finance, which is a new breed of DEXs coming online that's going to have a lot of different features to it that Will will explain to us. Will, how are you?
Good, thanks. Thanks so much for having me today, Greg.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was looking at your LinkedIn. You have a pretty extensive background in the crypto space, but you're also, your project that you co-founded, SOMA.Finance, also has a lot of innovation to it. So I was thinking maybe we could just get a broad overview of SOMA.Finance, and then we could dip into your background a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds great. So we're really excited about what we're building at SOMA.Finance, which is, kind of a next generation DeFi platform that's really focused, since day one on regulation and compliance. So a couple key products that we'll be launching very shortly, one being on the issuance side. We are a licensed broker-dealer in the US through our partner Tractorian Capital. And we actually developed an additional business line on top of our broker-dealer to be able to do private placements of tokenized securities and digital assets using DLT or blockchain technology. So the first product that we'll launch in the very near future will be the issuance. That'll start with actually our SOMA token, which will be a Reg CF, which is the US crowdfunding issuance, allowing us to actually do a token sale to US retail people as well as global, really for the first time ever, if not one of the first times. So the issuance side, and then as you mentioned, the DEX. So taking kind of the technology and the ingenuity of DEXs and AMMs that have sprouted up over the last couple of years, and now moving that into a couple different asset classes past just crypto and digital assets, but also with things like public equities, all one-to-one backed because we're licensed to be able to issue and work with those. Eventually moving into other assets, things like commodities, ETFs, so on and so forth. And then the third of which being earn and yield products. So everything from your, kind of DeFi staking and yield farming to on-chain POS staking of assets, which has definitely been a bit of a point of contention in the US, as some of the other platforms have been told recently that they would have to wind those down.
That's fascinating. So it's kind of like the full stack. You'll have the ability to crowdsource new issuances. And what's cool about crypto is that those are going to be liquid. Then you have a DEX essentially where you can trade those liquid issuances. And then you can broaden that out to sort of the greater traditional asset sphere, tokenize those and trade those. And then lastly, you have a custody solution that will allow you to earn yield on sort of your assets. So I just want to move back real quick. So there's something in the US called like WeFunder or WeFund, I think, where basically people can be retail VCs and buy little slices of equity of private companies. Now, is your token issuance sort of the same thing, but sort of the digital version where now we'll have a liquid version of a private investment?
Yeah, so most of those platforms, it became big back during kind of the GoFundMe days, I guess now probably like 15 or so years ago, where, people could invest into startups and invest into kind of emerging companies. And so on the heels of that is where you actually saw the creation of Reg CF, which is the regulation crowdfunding in the US. So that's all through private placement. So, any of those companies in the US, most of them will be issuing those through private placements as a Reg CF, which allows you to actually raise from US retail people up to $5 million within a calendar year. And so, what we're doing now is taking those issuances and that private placement and now moving it into things on chain. So you mentioned with WeFund or one of the other similar platforms out there, a lot of them do look at equity. That's definitely one structure that we can do within kind of the tokens, being an issuer that can issue securities. That security can be a number of things. So it could be equity, it could be, right to future dividends, or, interest, things like this. So actually our token, the SOMA token, it's not a equity-backed token, but it's more like a preferred common share in terms of people will actually be able to earn dividends from the platform that will then distribute out to all the token holders. And that's something that a lot of companies in the crypto space have wanted to do, but it's also, one of the pieces, the minute you start doing dividends or interest or payouts, that is 100% no questions asked a security.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way to kind of go around and say that's a utility. That is absolutely a security. So, most companies out there have avoided doing that because they've wanted to kind of stay within that utility token umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
But because we're actually, coming out, calling a spade, issuing these tokens as securities, we're actually able to have them act as such and do interesting things like give out dividends.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So the Soma token will be sort of the first issuance on your platform. When is that expected to come? And how do and then how do
sorry, go on.
how do other protocols and projects who would like to maybe issue a token on your platform, what do the economics look like, and how do they get in touch with you to do something like that?
Sure, absolutely. So, firstly on the SOMA token issuance, so we started our onboarding for the platform almost about a month ago. So we had been previously doing a waitlisting or whitelisting campaign. We had about 600,000 people that had signed up. So right now we're just kind of going through the process of onboarding all those people. So going through, the proper KYC AML process. It is, slightly different being a US licensed entity in terms of every single application that comes through. It has to be reviewed by an actual person. So it has to be reviewed by a Series 24 compliance officer in the US. Of course, one of the really, amazing things that we've developed in the background is what we call the SOMA Guard. And that's pretty much our whole admin compliance background and admin panel that allows us to, check everything from, and this is, using APIs from some other partners of ours to check, on-chain monitoring for their wallets to make sure that, they're not part of any illicit activity or, using any illicit, smart contracts and things like that, as well as, checking on any database, so making sure they're not on, any politically exposed persons list or on an OFAC list. But then, with all those, we have kind of this traffic light, yellow, red, green system. So if, all three come on in terms of your on-chain identity, your off-chain identity, and the information that you submitted, it's pretty easy for these compliance officers to go through and onboard people. So it's not quite the crazy overhead that you would think with that amount of people. But so we're currently doing onboarding now, and then we'll look to do the token offering very shortly. It's not giving any times just yet, but it's on the horizon, and we'll be making announcements probably within the next few weeks in terms of the actual dates of those. So, definitely follow our socials and newsletters to stay up to date on that.
Fantastic.
Now, in terms of other companies, one of the things that we're really excited about is actually being able to show people that there is a way to be compliant in the U.S. There's been a lot of negative press about, regulators, especially in the US, but just globally, that, they're not working fast enough, that, they need to come up with guidelines to, show people how it's done and allow them to kind of work within that. And while, it has been a bit of a slow process, we have seen how it does work in the US. So as I was mentioning kind of before the call, we actually did a token offering back in 2019. That was a digital security offering for an NBA player called Spencer Dinwiddie, who at the time was playing for the Brooklyn Nets. And he's actually back now playing for the Brooklyn Nets, funny enough. But we actually ended up tokenizing a piece of his earnings from his NBA contract back then. So it was a Reg D offering, which is just to accredited investors. But we were able to issue it. And this was actually right after we received the license on top of our broker-dealer through Tritorian to be able to do these private placements. So the interesting part is it actually ended up being a proof of license for us because we had talked with Spencer originally, and he had some other counsel, and they decided to work with another broker dealer. And because he was such a public figure and a public offering, the SEC and the regulators actually went to them and said, "Hey, you don't have the license to do this. Don't start fundraising." And that happened twice with two other broker dealers, so two others in total. And then finally came back to us, and we were able to do it successfully, audited by every division of FINRA. But, of course, we passed because we had the license and we do things right, and we're able to issue this. Wow. Of course, then it went into COVID. So, a lot of the hype and momentum kind of got stopped in its tracks there, to say the least. But it allowed us to, kind of conceptualize what SOMA is today, and allowed us to DeFi really to bloom with a lot of the technologies to emerge. But with that, so, we're really excited and looking forward to working with other companies across the board to help them be compliant in the US. So issue these assets in the US compliantly and operate compliantly, with us helping them through our broker dealer.
Yeah, interesting.
And so that's been one of the big pieces with our investors. So, two of our lead investors, one being Animoca Brands, which is, of course, big Goliath within the crypto NFT space, and one being Griffin Gaming Partners, which is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, gaming VC. They have a huge portfolio of hundreds of different companies. And if these ones want to be able to operate compliantly and legally in the US, we can be that partner to help them actually structure and do that. So if you're looking to do something and learn more, just reach out. We're on Twitter, Telegram, email, LinkedIn. We're happy to talk with pretty much everyone.
Yeah, and we'll have those links in the bio as well. So you mentioned there was about 600,000 people being whitelisted right now. So these would be potential investors. And how does their whitelisting work? Is it, this is my MetaMask address, here's my KYC AML, and then once I'm whitelisted, I can use the ETH in my MetaMask to participate in, say, the SOMA token issuance? Is it that simple?
So the waitlist has been, pretty much the road leading up to the onboarding. So it's just, getting people in line to then have the chance to onboard. Soon we'll actually open up onboarding to everybody, as we're, kind of making our way through that list. But, you're exactly right in terms of how it works. So the platform is non-custodial. It's not a, centralized system. It's not a wallet that's generated on the platform. We've kind of seen, especially over the last year, the downfalls of having custodied platforms with, FTX and Celsius. And, to be honest, there's too many to name, unfortunately. But, we really see the benefit of Web3 and of DeFi as being non-custodial. So the way that it works is exactly, so you come on, you go through the KYC process, you put in your MetaMask or Wallet Connect or one of your ERC20 wallets to start with, and that becomes your on-chain wallet. And then that wallet is then whitelisted to access any of the products within kind of the ecosystem. So I kind of call it the Band-Aid approach. So you do KYC once, and then you're good to go. So you rip it off, get it over with, and then you're onto the platform. You can use all the products across, the issuance, the DEX, the earning yield, et cetera.
That's fascinating.
And so they come on and then use the ETH in their wallet or the USDC or something like this, and be able to either purchase tokens to an issuance or then trade their ETH for, let's say, S Apple or S Tesla.
Cool.
And so forth.
And then as a founder, like let's say I want to issue a token through your platform. Is there like a fee that SOMA.Finance takes for the issuance, like investment bankers would in an IPO?
Yeah, exactly. So it is, a pretty structured kind of investment banking type fee. But of course, we're not here to be the barricade or the blockade in terms of doing this. We want more people to be compliant in the US. So we want to make it as, easy and straightforward as possible. So it looks like, there's a small, monthly retainer as we go through the kind of the process of the paperwork, the legal paperwork needs to be issued, all of that. And realistically, that doesn't take more than, we're targeting, let's say 2 to 4 months.
Cool.
Obviously, depending on the actual deal structure, it changes. And that's how we work directly with the clients to see what the right thing is for you. If it's just a Reg CF offering to retail up to 5 million, pretty straightforward. If it's Reg D, which is just accredited, done a number of those historically. And then, anything like a Reg A, Reg A plus, which is like a mini IPO. And that's a bit more intricate as that's, hundreds of pages of legal documents. But having said that, it's not something that we haven't done, previously on the broker dealer side.
And then as a SOMA token holder, is there any fees that pass through to token holders, or what do the tokenomics look like?
Absolutely. So that's, we were just, we're in the process of making some infographics and things like that. So it's definitely fresh on the mind. There's a lot of really interesting ways for people to earn just from holding, let's say, the SOMA token. So one, it is a dividend issuing asset.
Oh, interesting.
So just by holding it, you get access to dividends that will be giving off from the platform profit. And the frequency of those is TBD. But we'll look at anything from like 10% of the platform profits that go to token holders.
Very cool.
Then from there, because it is a DEX or AMM, you have the liquidity pool trading fees. So similar to Uniswap or SushiSwap or any of the other ones, a percentage of all the trades go to the LP providers. And so the interesting part with this, especially, of course, yes, if you have put it on the SOMA USDC pair, but is really with the public equities. So historically, for any place that you trade public equities, it's always a centralized system, and that system is what's taking all the fees.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever you trade, those small bips are going to the platform. Now anyone can earn in all the trading fees. So anyone can come in and put in their S Tesla and USDC liquidity into the pool, and then earn those back as trading fees.
Fantastic.
So that's really one of the big parts, and then also even things with like lending and margin lending with stocks and equities and things like that. That's something that every trading platform does. They lend out their public equities to banks and things like this, and actually being able to do that, but then the interest that you're earning from that lending, which again you're lending to all the big banks and institutions, that actually gets distributed back to the token holders as well of the tokenized equities. So like there's a number of things that you're actually earning interest and earning fees on across the board, because it is meant to be a completely non-custodial, transparent, democratized platform where everyone has access to earning all the fees across the board instead of just the house always wins kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So kind of shifting now to like the types of assets that could be trading on your DEX. So back to Spencer. I don't know much about the NBA, but I can imagine that this contract, as an investor, if I was going to buy future earnings of Spencer, I'm essentially betting that he's going to be the next Michael Jordan, and his earnings are going to be amazing, and therefore this is how I would win on sort of this trade. What are exactly the economics like? And it makes me think. That's one thought, and the other thought is it makes me think that this is scalable to other ideas. Like someone wants to make a movie, and they could sell off future box office tickets by tokenizing that revenue stream or something like that, and you can kind of extend that out to music and all sorts of media and entertainment. Can you touch a little bit more on the economics of the Spencer deal?
Yeah, absolutely. And so what you had said before, that was, nail on the head in terms of what we wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
What we ended up doing with him was pretty much a 3-year maturing high interest bond.
Got it.
So it wasn't anything too exciting, just because again, back in 2019, so a lot of this stuff was still kind of emerging, and people and institutions still had, and unfortunately they still do, but reservations with just the space in general. So we weren't able to do anything too intricate for Spencer, because originally, doing something like what you said in terms of having something that is equatable to his future earnings. So again, in the NBA, if you end up going to the playoffs and winning the championship, you end up earning more and more money. So that's definitely something that we look forward to do in the future. But with this one was a bit more vanilla in terms of pretty much just being a high interest bond.
Got it.
But having said that, you're exactly right. We are one of the most exciting parts of it, and not the most excited for, but it's really up there, is being able to work with the creative industry in terms of what Web3 and blockchain and tokenization is able to do.
Mm-hmm.
So again, with recording artists, releasing albums where you can actually have royalties that are derived based off of the NFTs or tokens that are created based off that album, or to raise money for an album, is going to be an amazing thing to see, and properly democratize this, so it's not just the big studios that are making the money.
Hmm.
And of course, remember, anytime you give off royalties, which are, very similar to things like dividends and interest, that's a security.
Right.
Um, but then, in terms of distribution rights, and merchandise and like anything like this can all be tokenized, whether it's a token, whether it's an NFT, any of which, we can help to actually issue, to structure, and do so compliantly in the US. And I think that's going to be really the next boom in terms of bringing in the next, hundreds of millions, if not billions of people, is having those industries, which it is, it's fan based. So you had a couple companies that have emerged out of Europe and elsewhere that are doing, fan-based tokens, but because it can't be a security, it's not that interesting. It's picking
Right.
the color of the socks, it's picking the song they come out to, but actually being able to have something that's issued as a security. So, you can actually say, we want to go for, this player, or, we want to be able to tokenize, let's say 1% of a sports team, and actually have the upside go to those token holders. Everything is possible.
Yeah.
And that's really the exciting part, because I think that's what's going to get people to really encourage them to get into the space and learn more, and download a Web3 wallet and things like that, because they'll actually be interested to participate and be active within their favorite sports teams, and actually be able to earn some passive income or upsides from those assets.
Yeah, 100%. And then on the sort of producer side of things, I mean, you can think of like music and recording labels often taking a lot of creative control away from artists, whereas an artist now gets to retain creative control and then, front load future revenue essentially by selling some of.
Exactly.
So that makes a lot of sense to me. Well,
Yeah.
this seems really interesting. Can we get a little bit about your background and sort of how you came to co-found Soma.Finance?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a jumped around a bit over the years. So I live. I'm here in Hong Kong currently, and that's where we have an office here. So a lot of the marketing and kind of operations are based here. So I've been in Hong Kong for about 5 years. Before which I was in Shanghai for about 4 years. And when I was up in Shanghai, I was working in F&B for a bit. Then I was working in sustainable agriculture, then moved to the venture capital arm for AB InBev, which was, really interesting. And it was during that time that I actually started to learn more about just blockchain in general. With that side, we did a lot within supply chain and logistics in terms of, either getting brands and getting products out to China and to Asia. So that, it really intrigued me in terms of starting to learn about everything that blockchain was able to do. And at that time, my, now current co-founder and partner, John Mullen, we were friends out there, and he was working at a investment bank, and he was doing research around fintech and blockchain. And we both started to just really kind of get into it. We both had our day jobs, but we would meet up, 8 p.m. every night until 2, 3, 4 in the morning, host meetups, do courses, things like this. And this was, back in 2015, 2016, until finally we realized that, one, we knew what we were talking about, made a name for ourselves a bit over there, and it had just become, the real passion. And we decided that that was, what we saw the future, and where we saw, really the next big opportunity, something that comes, if we're lucky, once in our lifetime. And I think that,
Yeah.
Web3 and blockchain and crypto really is that. I mean, generation before had the internet, and the dot-com booms, but, really taking advantage and seeing what this could do across the board. And so we quit our jobs, and then we had joined on for a crypto exchange that we helped to found back in 2017. That, was proper 2017 ICO boom, raised a bunch of money. We actually then moved to Hong Kong just because China cracked down and said they didn't allow any crypto exchanges in the country. So we were like, okay, next best place, let's go to Hong Kong. And, had a couple friends there and built that up. And then we, kind of took a step away from that. Crypto, winter happened 2018. And then, kind of separated, still continued to work with the guys in the US. Actually, the silver lining of that exchange was we met Jim and Bill who are our other co-founders on SOMA.Finance and who have been running the broker-dealer in the US out of New York since the early
Oh, cool.
2000s. And that was actually really the first, conversation and creation of what SOMA.Finance is. Back then with the centralized exchange, we were like, it would be great if it could be multi-asset. Of course, starting with crypto, but eventually going into public equities, commodities, FX, all this kind of stuff. But that didn't necessarily, it was just too early. No one really gave a shit about regulation back in 2017 when it was, the proper wild, wild west. But we always knew that was going to be one of the biggest things. And, the day of reckoning to a degree would come. And so we went to the SEC and FINRA back then. We were like, hey, we have a broker-dealer license. Would it be possible we want to work with securities, but on the blockchain? And they were like, totally different. Don't do it. Like, absolutely not. And that pretty much started the 2.5-year saga of back and forth with them.
Wow.
And then eventually leading up to 2019 when we actually received this additional business line.
Wow.
So you can go to Broker Check, which is the actually FINRA run website that has all of the different certificates and broker dealers for all the licensed firms in the US. You can see on the Tritorian Capital one, you go down to page 11, which has like all the different lines of what a broker dealer can do. And within other, it says private placements of digital securities using blockchain or DLT technology. So like, right there,
Amazing.
There's no question about it.
Wow.
And then we did the Spencer Dinwiddie deal, but of course COVID happened. Spencer got COVID, which was, first to actually have the asset that we were raising funds from get COVID. But to be honest, it was worked out for the best. Silver lining was, John and I, kind of took a step back as things were going crazy really around the world. And we started MontraDAO in August of 2020, which was a DeFi staking node operating ecosystem that's still around today. That's also started to kind of pivot, move towards more regulated DeFi, as that's definitely the future, as well as building its own Cosmos Tendermint EVM compatible chain that eventually will hopefully loop into Soma. And then we saw kind of the emergence of all these different DeFi ingenuities, AMMs, staking, yield farming, things that were really, properly unique. AMMs, I think, are one of the biggest fintech developments, ever.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to have something that's, it's peer-to-peer, it takes away all of the different problems that centralized exchanges had pretty much since day one. So, wash trading, insider trading, market manipulation, order book manipulation, all this stuff gets taken away. Because you don't have that. It's all peer-to-peer. It's all a shared liquidity pool. It's all right there. So, a lot of these things that really are going to be the future in terms of how the global financial ecosystem is going to be democratized, emerged. And that's when we came back with Jim and Bill in the US. And we're like, hey, listen, we built all these different products. Now let's, how do we put a KYC AML wrapper around it and create something that we can launch in the US? And that was really the emergence of SOMA.Finance.
Wow, that's fantastic. Very cool. And then just last few things, just wrapping up here. I usually like to ask a couple personal questions. So the first one, is there any favorite books that you have? Usually it's a trading book, but any book is cool. And then secondly, what do you like to do for fun outside of building SOMA.Finance?
Absolutely. So, well, it's difficult to find time to,
for sure.
do too much. There's just not enough hours in the day. Recently, we've been trying to do a good job in the office in terms of reading a lot of, business, corporate books, product focused books. So that's been, really great. And I know, John has been, kind of leading that in terms of just ordering different books nonstop, which is, really interesting, and learning from, some of the great founders from around the world, which I think is a really an important thing for any founder to be able to just get insights from other founders. But then separately from that, I do like fictions a lot. So I'm currently reading Norwegian Wood by Murakami.
Cool.
which is, I mean, very great. So, trying to kind of balance the two, part work and part for what I want to read.
That's fantastic. I don't think I've
Um,
ever read a fiction book outside of high school. I got to get into it. I know I'm missing out on some good stuff.
there's some, I mean, it's, I definitely sit more on the marketing, design, creative, BD. Of course, with everything, I know more than most people about compliance and regulation and things like this. But I think reading fictions are, a great way to see just, how people are creatively thinking,
Yeah.
the stories that people come up with, and there's, really a lot to learn. It's not just that you have to learn from nonfiction or you have to learn from, books that are focused on, these specific topics in business and these kind of things. So I would highly suggest, and Murakami is definitely one of the greats.
Love it.
And then, yeah, so, for fun, after this, it's almost 10:45 on Saturday here in Hong Kong. Beautiful sunny day. So, probably go to the beach. I have 4 dogs,
Oh, wow. Cool.
here in Hong Kong. So, going on hikes with them, going to the beach, hanging out on the water. It is crazy hot and humid during the summer times here in Hong Kong. So if you're going to be outside, it has to be close to some sort of water. Otherwise, it's just sweating from head to toe.
Yeah, good to know. Well, Will, thank you so much. I think this was really interesting. I'm sure listeners learned a lot, and I learned a lot personally as well. So thanks for coming on. And
Amazing. Appreciate it.
absolutely. To everyone else, we'll see you next time.
Great. Thanks so much, Greg. Talk
Absolutely.
soon.